afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, right around noon. Sorry for the delay, but we are rolling and we are ready to go now. So today we are going to be talking about FDR and the New Deal. So our learning targets for today, I told you, would be jam-packed. I can explain the different approaches of Hoover and FDR. I can explain how FDR attempted to rid the country of the Great Depression. And I can describe the tension between liberals and conservatives that existed as a result of the New Deal. So we got 3 learning targets for this lesson alone. This lesson is going to take us all the way up through winter break, so it is super, super critical that we understand all this information. If you don't know what FDR means, don't worry about it. You're going to know in about 15 or so seconds. Okay? So, Hoover, 1932, wants to run for re-election. And to do that, he realizes that pretty much the entire country is pissed off at him because he hasn't done anything. So what does he do? He tries to implement some federal policies that will help America. But the bottom line is that it is too little, too late. And so, as a result, Hoover loses the election of 1932 to FDR in a landslide. It ends up being one of the most dominating victories of any presidential candidate in American history. And it ends up not even being the most. In 1936, FDR wins all but 8 electoral votes, so he basically smokes his competition for the rest of his terms. So the differences between Hoover and FDR: while Hoover was a straight, laissez-faire president, FDR realized that America needed government intervention. Hoover is labeled as a conservative. And this is really the first time where we can clearly link conservatives to the Republican Party, while FDR is a liberal. We can link him to the Democratic Party. Okay, so this is the biggest idea here. This idea of laissez-faire versus government intervention when it comes down to the economy. And this is why FDR wins. FDR wins because the people need help, and people realize they need help, and they do not think they are going to get it with Hoover. They think they're going to get it with FDR. And what's the end result? They definitely get it. So FDR is in office now. What? His primary goal is to restore the faith and confidence in America. And so what he does is he implements a policy known as the New Deal. And he does this within his first 100 days in office. So it's called the 100-day plan, but now everyone knows it as the New Deal. And so he puts this policy into place, but FDR realizes that he has to do something that's never done before. He has to try to reach every single American. And how does he do that? He does it with something called the fireside chat. And the fireside chat was the first of its kind. It was through the radio, and FDR would go on radio. And the vision is that everyone would sit by the radio next to their fireplace, and they would listen to FDR. And FDR would basically be straight with people, but he would try to give everyone confidence in the economy. And very similar to kind of like what Obama did in 08, his theory was the idea of hope and restoring hope. Now, the first New Deal, there are 2 New Deals, but we're pretty much just going to blend them into one and just refer to it as the New Deal. So, the New Deal was based on the 3 R's, and the 3 R's are relief, nobody is putting any money into the banks, and FDR realizes this is not good at all. So what he decides to do is he decides to close all banks until they can prove that they can be financially stable. And it's not until they can prove that they are financially stable that they can reopen. And because of this, because he did this, plus he had a fireside chat about the bank holiday, a lot of people decided to put their money into the banks, and that was a huge, huge thing. And in addition to the bank holiday, he also, with the help of Congress, established something called the Glass-Steagall Banking Act. And the Glass-Steagall Banking Act basically provided insurance. So if you put money into the bank and something happens to that bank, you still will get your money. Okay, so we are insuring the money in the bank. Why? Because, again, we want to restore faith and confidence in the economy in the United States, and this was a huge, huge step to doing so. The bank holiday was the first of many successful steps in the New Deal. Now, FDR's biggest belief was that if we are going to get the economy back on track, we have to put people to work. And this is what much of the New Deal was all about. Putting people to work. It is not about handouts. We're not just going to give people money. We're going to put them to work. And when we put them to work, I know I did that twice, and when we put them to work, what are they going to do? They're going to spend their money. Okay? So what FDR does is he puts into play a lot of federal working programs. Okay, so federal programs that will help people work, because he realizes that there are a lot of people who cannot start businesses on their own, so he's going to have the government do it for us. So who is working in these? Well, it's mostly white males. Mostly white males are working. There are some African American males, there are some women, but for the most part it is white males, and notably, especially in one of the most successful programs of the New Deal, is 18 to 23-year-old males. Okay, so young males, trying to get them on track, trying to get them going. But again, another huge thing, FDR's belief in getting people to work. Now, the New Deal and labor. How does the New Deal and labor, how do they relate to each other? Well, the New Deal is a huge proponent of labor unions. And this is a common theme where we see that liberals are very, very huge proponents of labor unions. They back labor unions. And in the first New Deal, we're going to see the creation of something called the National Recovery Administration. And the National Recovery Administration is all about helping labor. So they do a lot of things such as eliminating child labor and setting a maximum number of hours that you can work. In addition, in the second New Deal, we passed something known as the Wagner Act. And the Wagner Act helps labor unions with collective bargaining. So again, it's just the idea of allowing labor unions to be strong. And when the government allows labor unions to be strong, unions will be strong. So we are fighting for the workers again. Very progressive idea, fighting for the common man. Now, the Supreme Court's role in this whole thing, the Supreme Court was not a huge fan of FDR. They felt that he really overstepped his boundaries. So a lot of the things, and we're going to look at exactly which policies were put into play, but they struck down a lot of New Deal legislature. Why? Because the government, they felt, was becoming too powerful. In particular, the executive branch. So what was FDR's response? FDR's response was pretty radical, and this is something that he's really been hated on, was that he tried to add Supreme Court justices. So if he added enough, he would basically get his way, because he would put his people into play, which means his policy would pass. So his people equals his policies. And this was not okay. While liberals want a strong central government, conservatives want a weak one. And the Supreme Court tries to kind of balance that out. So the Supreme Court believed that FDR was violating the system of checks and balances. And that was not okay. So they were constantly checking FDR to make sure that he was not becoming too powerful. But everybody loved him. Everyone loved what he was doing because it was really helping people out. But this was kind of the black eye as far as the New Deal goes and as far as FDR goes, trying to become too powerful, a lot of people felt. So, the impact of the New Deal. Its effectiveness, well, it got people working. There's no doubt about that. But it's tough to measure because of something, and we looked at this yesterday. We looked at the two instances, but World War II makes it very difficult to measure the effectiveness of the New Deal. Was it effective? Was it not? Well, right around the time that the New Deal was starting to end, World War II was starting to pick up. And because of our involvement in World War II, our economy boomed. So it's very, very difficult to measure the effectiveness of the New Deal. But its impact is huge. There are quite a few New Deal programs still in play. Which is pretty crazy when you really think about it, because this was supposed to be just kind of a short, quick fix. But a lot of New Deal programs still exist, and we're going to look at those this weekend. Okay? So, again, try to get in a lot. I appreciate it. We're going to take 3 days. We're going to get through it. But if we can explain how FDR comes to victory versus Hoover in the 1932 election and the differences between the two, if we can explain how FDR tried to get the U.S. out of the Great Depression, with things such as the 3 R's, relief, reform, and recovery, with things such as putting people to work. And if we can describe why conservatives disagree with New Deal policies and how FDR was very, very borderline as far as checks and balances go, then we are good to go. That's all that I got for you guys. Last thing is Decimal wants to wish everybody a happy holidays. So with that, I am out. Have a great rest of your weekend. Goodbye.